When I was a student at BYU in the 1950s, BYU had more moral victories than numerical victories. And it was kind of a joke among the student body, and BYU surely was not as competitive as it was to become.
Let me say this, our athletic programs, which have been stunning and continue to get better and better.
Sports have always been an integral part of the BYU picture. But back in the years when Red Grange and Chick Harley were making football history, BYU was not exactly the Notre Dame of the West.
I have absolutely zero interest in BYU being the Notre Dame of anything. The reference I used to hear was that BYU would be the Harvard of the West. I'm not interested in that either. I'm not interested in being Notre Dame. I'm not interested in being Harvard. I'm not interested in being anything but BYU. If Harvard wants to be the BYU of the East, or if Notre Dame wants to be the BYU of the Midwest, then I'm interested.
The alumni didn't bring a lot of pressure. The general authorities were in a better position to bring pressure, but there wasn't a great deal of that in respect to football. But I did feel more on basketball. It was a function of the recent construction of the Marriott Center, built under President Wilkinson, dedicated in the first 6 months of my own service. Great consciousness that this was a preeminent basketball arena in the country. We were in the middle of the Kreshimir-Chosic era. Stan Watts was the coach. There was great prominence to basketball in that period, a great deal of interest, and I think that accounts for a little more pressure in basketball than in football.
I got thinking about it. I don't think there's a school in America that has the built-in alumni support and visible athletic support that BYU has, wherever it goes.
In numbers and in quality.
In quality.
But I think the morale factor reaches across the university, and it reaches very importantly into the fundraising of the university, into its prominence, how well known it is, and that helps recruiting, not just athletic recruiting, but it helps on occasion faculty and staff recruiting. It helps recruiting students to come to the university. I don't want to overstate it, but it's a significant factor with many. And conversely, if you have a losing program, that goes over into negatives. And so I think it's important for a major university like BYU to be competitive in all of its athletic programs.
I'm not convinced that people have flocked to the font of baptism because of BYU football. I just don't believe that. But having said that, I think if there is no gainsaying, there is no minimizing the elevation in at least the eyes of the sporting public of BYU and therefore the name of the church. Almost every sportscaster that I've ever heard has made some link between BYU and its sponsoring church, and probably some reference to these returned missionaries out there, and whatever, for good or for ill. Now, my point is, I wouldn't want to make too much out of that. I wouldn't want to say that somehow that's more important than 6 discussions and family prayer. It's not. But as a public relations impact for the university, and therefore tangentially at least for the church, I think it's brought a lot of publicity. We would always hope and want that to be good publicity. Sometimes, on an occasion or two, it hasn't been good publicity. So there'd be a downside as well as a plus. That's why probably we shouldn't make too much out of it one way or the other. That isn't the church, and we wouldn't want people on some days to say it was the church.
BYU has organized with their opponent schools, a school that hosts a BYU team, our opponents on the athletic field, but with our leadership, they become co-workers in humanitarian projects and other things that the local school wants to promote, and that very active BYU alumni and the cooperation of the team gets behind the local school.
Yeah. My wife June was a very, very competitive person. She cared deeply about winning. And we were at a bowl game that we lost. I think we played Navy.
Rolling is McMahon, and McMahon gets in at the time for a touchdown.
Navy then took over, scoring 20 straight points.
Wide receiver named McConkey kept catching passes at times inconvenient for the Cougars, and I felt offended that a player named McConkey was beating BYU. And Navy beat us in the bowl game, and after the game, I stood up and we were filing out in some disappointment, and my wife kicked me on the ankle. And I said, "What did you do that for?" And she said, "You're the only one I can kick, and I've got to kick somebody." She was so disappointed at losing that game. I remember being kicked in the shins after a bowl game by the only person that would really do that.
I confess I'm interested in athletics and sports, and so I do watch this. But our coaches, our assistant coaches, our trainers, the staff, as well as the players, are just increasing in every way, but particularly increasing in loyalty to the standards and the skill with which they take a higher and higher stand and position in the national assessment of such things.